Welcome to this week's class on Chassidus. We're going to be learning a beautiful Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe. The name of the Chassidic discourse is called Shoftim v'Shoitrim. The Rebbe said this Chassidic discourse on Shabbos Parsha Shoftim, which is the fourth day in the month of Elul, in the year Tavshin Chav Zayin, 57 years ago. So again, the Chassidic discourse is based on the verse in this week's Torah portion where it says, Shoftim v'Shoitrim titin lecha b'chol sharecha, that judges and officers you should put on all your gates. Now, Parsha Shoftim, Rebbe says, falls out most cases in the month of Elul. In other words, Parsha Shrei, sometimes it's in the month, in the Shabbos that blesses the month of Elul, and sometimes it's in the month of Elul. However, Parsha Shoftim is always in the month of Elul. So therefore, you have to say that it has a connection with the month of Elul. And like we know what it says in Shalom Kadosh, that every Torah portion has a connection with the week that is taking place. And especially like we know the teaching of the Alter Rebbe, that we have to live with the time, you have to live with the times. So what does that mean? That there's a connection with Parsha Shoftim and Chodesh Elul. Now, the mitzvah of Shoftim v'Shoitrim, judges and officers to put up, which was given to the community, they should establish the Sanhedrin, the judges, that they should rule the Jewish people a righteous justice. And this mitzvah applies only in the times of the temple. And in the times of the temple specifically, it was on all the gates, and it was every single city, every single province, and every single tribe. But it only took place in the land of Israel, not outside the land of Israel. However, now that we are in Galut, and we don't have the Sanhedrin, but nevertheless, we do have in the times of Galus the idea of Shoftim and Shoitrim, not physically, but spiritually. And in every place. And that's why it says, Shoftim and Shoitrim titin lecha, to you, every single individual, that the idea of Shoftim and Shoitrim applies to every single person, even outside the land of Israel, and even in Galus. So Rebbe says, he brings from the Medrash, the Medrash says as follows. He gives a mashal, he gives a parable, that the person that had multiple children, and he loved his youngest son more than anyone. And he had a lot of possessions, and he had an orchard that he loved more than anything else. So the king says, I'm going to give the thing that I love the most to the child that I love the most. So the same thing also, that's a parable. So the same thing also Hashem says, I love the Jewish people the most. Like it says, Ki na Yisrael v'yavei, Hashem loves us. And it says, Hashem oyev hamishpat, Hashem loves justice. So I'm going to give the mishpat, the justice, to the Jewish people, and through that I'll be able to reside my shechina, my presence amongst them. So Rebbe says, one second, what's the connection with these two ideas? With mishpat and the shechina residing amongst the Jewish people. So he says, we'll understand this based on an introduction of what the one of the commentaries on the Torah called the Shach. And it's also brought down in Ora Torah, on the Torah portion. So based on what it says in the verse, Shoftim v'Shoitrim titin lecha b'chol sharecha, judges and officers you should put in all the gates. So he says that sharecha, which is gates, there's two insights to the way to translate gates. One is, what are the gates? Notice practically, it's referring to the 248 limbs that we have in a body. That's one opinion. The other opinion, the gates are referring to the 7 gates that we all have. And like it says in the book of Yetzirah, what are the 7 gates that we have? It's the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 holes in our nose, and then the mouth. So that's total 7 gates. And from these 7 gates, it goes into the 248 limbs, like the first insight. So again, the gates are, one opinion is the 248 limbs, the other one's the 7 gates, which is the ears, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and from there it goes into the limbs. Now, these 4 ideas, for these 7 gates, are really 4 things. They're the ears, and then the eyes, and then the nose, and the mouth. So these 4 is connected to what? The 4 letters in Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hashem's name. Why? Because the eyes and the ears are connected to the idea of Chachma and Bina, and the nose is connected to Zod, the small face, which is the 6 midos, or Tiferes, and which is the main component of Zah, and the mouth is connected to what? To Malchus, speech. Powerful stuff. Eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. It's connected to what the 4 letters of Hashem's name, which is also the way that the spheres survive, the Chachma, Bina, the midos, and Malchus. And it's brought down in Sefer Yetzirah that these 7 gates are actually double. Why? Because you have the way the gates interact with the godly soul, and then you have the way the gates interact with the animal soul. So that's one double. In the godly soul itself, there's also a double. Because you have the 7 gates, so they interact with the attribute of chesed, the right side, and everything that spins off the right. And then you have the way the gates interact with the gvura, with the left side, and everything that comes from the left side. And so that's another idea. And also that we know that in the letters there's something which is called a dogosh and a rafui. In other words, dogosh means that you're underscoring, which is the idea of gvura, strength, and rafui, which is more loose, is the idea of chesed. In other words, that they're both coming from a place of holiness, but it's two different paths of holiness. Like, for example, there's the people that are strict, and that's one way of serving Hashem. And there's people more easygoing. It's another way of serving Hashem. And guess what? It goes back to history from the times of the Talmud and the Mishnah. Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai was very, very strict. He had the dogash had to be like this. Beis Hillel was more loose and more lenient. And because we know Beis Shammai is connected to the attribute of Gevura, and Beis Hillel is the attribute of Chesed. And they're both holy. Not one is right and wrong. 2 different paths. And like we see, for example, many times the law is like Beis Shammai, more strict, and there's times that the ruling is like Beis Hillel, which is more kindness, and they're both holiness. And therefore we see that literally sometimes the law is like Beis Shammai. And like it says in the Mishnah and Idias, and the same thing also with the another double of 2 in the godly soul itself. You have chesed and gvura, kindness and severity, and from here you have where it goes out to all the different limbs. Okay, so now we know what the gates are. The gates we're putting on these officers. So that's why it says shoftim v'shotrim. You put judges and officers on the gates, which we already learned, all the different levels of the gates, the limbs and the different access to us, and the right and the left, etc. That what is the job of a judge? He's to go ahead and give a ruling, which means says we ourselves, not someone else. We have to make a ruling, and we have to think. We have to make a decision, practically, what to do. Because the fact is, we know that the Yetzer Hara is working overtime, and like the teaching of the Tzemach Tzedek, that sometimes the Yetzer Hara actually gets clothed in a very, very fancy silky garment, and he dresses up like a religious person and a godly person, and he convinces you from a godly place to rebel against Hashem. So therefore, you need to be a shofet, you need to be a real judge. So you have to ask yourself, this voice that I'm hearing, is it coming from holiness? Or is it coming from the opposite of holiness? So that's a shofet. You have to make a decision. You have to be able to analyze, is it coming from a holy place or the opposite? Afterwards you have something which is called shotrim. Then you have the officers. What's the difference between a judge and an officer? Literally. Now the judge is basically who gives you clarity, intellectually, what's right and what's wrong. The job of an officer is just to execute what the vision is. And the same thing also applies in our spiritual service of Hashem. That first we need to have the ruling, just like the intellect, and then you have to actualizing it, which is the emotions that comes into practically. So therefore, what comes out from here? That when it comes to shoftim, coming up with the vision, and shotrim acting it out, in other words, which means the idea is, since shoftim is more intellect and shotrim is more emotions, to draw down intellect into the emotions. And that's the whole idea of counting of the Omer. Because we know that before the Jewish people received the Torah, Matan Torah, we have to count the 7 weeks. What's the idea? What's the idea of Sfiras Omer? Is to draw down the intellect into the emotions. And that's why we counted 7 weeks. For the seven attributes of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchus. And that's why he says in all your gates. In other words, in all the 7 different gates. And from there it goes down to the 248 limbs, which is correspond to the 248 positive mitzvahs, and that was all preparation to receive the Torah. And the same thing applies when we receive the Torah. In order to receive the Torah, before we receive the Torah, it says Nafsav and Ishma. First we accept it, and then we wanted to hear. What does accepting mean? Accepting, Kabbalah Soil. And like it says in the Medrash, a powerful Medrash says, like for example, it gives a parable of a king that that he comes to the city, and the servants say, "Give us decrees." So the king says, "Oh, relax. before I give you decrees, accept me as the king. Then I'll give you decrees. Because first you need to accept Kabbalah Soil. And that's why when it came to the 10 Commandments, before God gave us the commandments, it had to be Nasa. We have to accept. And then Hashem said, Anochi, I'm your God. And He gave us all the commandments. And it was first you need to accept, and then you can have all the mitzvahs. So the same thing applies every single day. That's why it says in the Talmud, why when we say the Shema, it says, we say Shema, and then we say V'hayim Shemaya. And the way the parshiyos are, that why do we say Shema first? Because Shema is accepting Hashem, Ol Malchus Shemayim, and then we accept the mitzvot. Now, when we go ahead and we accept, that happens when we start the process of serving Hashem. We have to do acceptance first. But after you accept, then you have to do the work in every one of your gates. What does that mean practically? You have to do the mitzvot. And that's the idea of accepting to doing the mitzvahs. Because when we do the mitzvahs, that's the detail of the will of Hashem. And when you do the mitzvahs, that's how you reach even higher than Makiv, and even higher than the internal part of Makiv, or the essential part of Makiv. And literally by doing the mitzvah, that's how you connect to the essence of Hashem. Now, why is that simple mitzvah? It's all about, I accepted Hashem. Why is the mitzvah so important? Why do the mitzvahs take me to Hashem? Because Hashem, we all know, Hashem wanted to have a dwelling place where Hashem is concealed. And the concealment comes from division. And the division that every mitzvah. And when you go ahead and do the mitzvah, you go ahead and connect to the essence of Hashem. And the same thing also on a spiritual level, that where is God revealed? You want to know where God is revealed? Is in the 10 spheroids, which basically, it's not one, it's actually in 10. In the division, that's where you get the essence of Hashem. And that's the real power of Mishpat. Because that's why it says, in the Medrash, you said before, Hashem likes justice. Why? Because what is Mishpat? Mishpat is the intellect where you have different details. And as you have to decide, is this the right thing, the wrong thing, is it correct, is it not correct, is maybe someone lying to you? In other words, the question is, why does a shayfa, the judge, have to deal with lying? But what do we see from here? When you go into it, you get to see, is it true or it's not true? And then you can come out to appropriate ruling. Like I said, Hashem is with him because he gave the appropriate ruling. When is Hashem with him? Only after you went through the whole process of dealing with falsehood and refining it. In order to refine it, you have to know all the details. And that's why he said you should never judge someone until you reach their place. Because when you put yourself in their shoes, then you can give a ruling. You have to know what's going on. So you see that what Mishpat is about details. And therefore Hashem loves Mishpat because He likes the details. And therefore it says Mishpat is Hu Yisrael for the Jewish people, because like we said, in reference to Yisrael, it says Nar Yisrael, but Hashem loves us. And what is the idea of a nar, a lad? A nar means it's like it's small. What does that mean? What is it referring to? Where a nar? It's referring to a simple faith. Every single Jewish person has simple faith in Hashem without putting any effort. And how do we have faith? It's an inheritance. And like the Alter writes in Tanya clearly, that what's an inheritance? You didn't work for it. You didn't put any effort. And even a child can inherit. And when you inherit everything. And even though you inherit, so what's the connection to it? But the fact is, you inherit it, and that's faith. Faith is, we all have faith. We're connected to Hashem, and that's why Hashem gave specifically Mishpat, all the rules to the Jewish people. Because where do we get that? We get that because we have the faith, because we're just accepting. We have total faith in Hashem. That's why Hashem gave us all the details. And like the famous teaching that the simplicity of a simple person, you literally take the essence of Hashem. So on one hand, yes, Hashem wants us to give us the details, but in order to receive the details, we have nasa. We have to accept, we have to have faith. And that's the connection with the idea of Mishpat. Like we explained before, what's the idea of Mishpat? Yes, there is divisions, but nevertheless, through that you can take Hashem himself. And the same thing also when a person does a mitzvah, and you do it all the details of the mitzvah, you literally draw in the essence of Hashem. Notice, even though the will of Hashem is higher than details, but how do you draw that? How do you connect to it? Yeah, it's higher, but you connect it through the details. And that's why it's important when you do a mitzvah, you have to do every single detail of the mitzvah, because in the will of Hashem, it's important that every single detail is fulfilled, and that's how you take Hashem himself. And this is the connection between Parsha Shoftim with the month of Elul. Why? Because what's the month of Elul? The month of Elul is the month we do an accounting, a soul searching in our thought, soul searching in our speech, soul searching in our action. and we start off with all the 7 gates, and then it goes down to the 248 limbs. And that's why it says shoftim v'shoitrim. And on a spiritual level, we have to go into the details, and we have to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to. And then it comes not only in us, it comes into the world. Because beginning, it comes down, Hashem gives us a gift, doidi li, which basically that's the tremendous gift from on high, until, like it says, that everyone will know that Hashem created the world, and it's going to come down initially into the land of Israel. And as we know, Israel is going to spread all over the world. All over the world. And like it says in our Torah portion, that Hashem is going to expound the borders of Keni, Knizi, Kadmoini, and that's going to happen through Mashiach coming, and he should come and redeem us, and should happen very, very quickly in our days. And the Rebbe finishes all as Amen, and so it should be. So here you have another powerful, beautiful Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe, with practical applications of bringing God into your life in every single part of our life. And by bringing God in our life, by one hand being simple, accepting, but then bringing down God into all the details, this is the way we'll bring God into the world. And like the Rebbe finishes off, when God comes into the world, we'll have the ultimate fulfillment of Hashem's dream, and we'll have the coming of Mashiach. And let's hope and pray that next class will be in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Have a great and blessed week. Shavua Tov.